Welcome to another edition of the official Catchup. It's me, Ben, joined as ever by my good mate Chris. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, good, good. I don't tend to watch like a lot of TV actually, but I've had a bit of a documentary day today as well, a wee bit later on Sunday. Ben, I tweeted out obviously I watched the Manti Teo thing, which for people if they don't know is basically a few years ago the boy got kind of slagged off because he said his girlfriend had died and he was going for like the Heisman Trophy, had a promising NFL career ahead of him, and then it turned out it was a lie, and everyone kind of put the blame on him. But watching this documentary, it kind of came out the truth of what happened there, and it was just like absolutely wild, the actual real story. And the boy was like completely humble and forgiving of everything. But I'd encourage anyone, sports fans or no, just to go and watch that because I actually feel a wee bit bad for him actually with what happened, because even I was like, taking the piss back in the day, like everyone else was. So that's been most of my Sunday so far, Ben.
Talking about documentaries, have you watched the Open Goal Broomhill documentary that surfaced last night? I think it was.
Yeah, I watched it this morning. Quite interesting. I think the most enjoyable part for me was when Sai was absolutely shouting and screaming at the lads. I really enjoyed that because, that kind of inside look into his management always interests me. Certainly, it kind of cut off. Obviously, there's going to be more than one part to it. I'm interested in when we actually get into I guess what you want to call the season, because a lot of it was sort of pre-season, the build up. I'm more interested in seeing how these boys react in real competitive games. And obviously, Sai setting the standards out in pre-season didn't really tell me a lot of what I didn't know already, sort of thing, or what I've heard, or how I'd expect it. But it was entertaining to watch. Obviously, casts a light onto our level, which is good.
Yeah, I've watched about 20 minutes of it so far. I cut it off just after Moza appeared this morning. I've been out all afternoon, so didn't quite get the time to watch it all. But I'll go back and watch it tonight. But yeah, you're right. I think it's great to see a documentary about the level, and obviously there's a lot of story behind the whole open goal thing. I think it's probably still quite divisive, I think, for a lot of people, and it shed some light on maybe some of the decisions that are made and some of that stuff. So keen to see obviously what's to come, and it's interesting to hear Sai's a manager as well. I think he's obviously got a lot of knowledge of the game. That's abundantly clear about him as a manager as well. So yeah, it should be good, and it's one of those ones about content. Like I said at the start, when Open Goal Broomhill became a thing, I was on board because of the content element of it, and that's something that I've always been try to keep up with in terms of what they do and what they're all about. So yeah, decent.
One thing that I feel that Sai was a wee bit conscious of was obviously the fact, are these guys taking the piss and all that sort of stuff. And he said obviously he wants to kind of distance the club from the podcast, but I didn't understand why bring all the boys from the podcast in if you're trying to be serious too. It's like if you're trying to make it kind of two identities, then why have Kevin Kyle there? Why have Slaney there? I know these are guys that he trusts and wants to sort of have their knowledge, but yeah, I think it is hard from people maybe not knowing anything other than the podcast to sort of distinguish between the two. But I think he is trying to come across as a serious manager, which he does well. But yeah, I would probably pick him up on that point where it is very hard for people to see anything other than these guys having a laugh. Because it's the same guys involved in the football club. But it's not my criticism. It's just as I say, it's an acknowledgement of what Sai was trying to do there.
I guess it's that thing of what they're trying to sell ultimately is that the podcast, not sell the podcast, but sell the whole thing. And what brings a lot of the people in to Broomhill and the whole game experience, etc., is because of the podcast and the people that are involved, and people want to know about Slaney and his first match and all that kind of stuff. So Kevin Kyle obviously been involved in the highlights and commentary and things like that with Moza, and that's just a whole part of it. And again, on the reverse of that, I've seen they've had like Robbie Hardy, for example, on who's their 20s coach, on the podcast a couple of times, and he was kind of brought in as their under 20s coach, is Andy Hardy's brother. So he was at I think Partick or something like that beforehand, and then he became the 20s coach at Broomhill. So they obviously are kind of merging in between each other. It's not, it's an odd thing to say, but maybe it's one of these things said heat in the moment, but in hindsight, they've obviously done it that way where it's a bit of both, and I guess it's all about trying to sell the whole concept, whether that's the podcast or try to sell the football team. Either way, because I guess you'll have podcast fans, you'll have football fans, and you'll probably try to cross them over. That's the thing. The crossover is probably what it's all about for me. And see how it goes. And moving on, I think just to cover off open goal, obviously there was a card in the Lowland League on Saturday. The first game we'll talk about then is open goal. Broomhill winning 3-2 versus Bo'ness United. Good win for Broomhill away from home. That's probably one of the things that they've maybe struggled with so far this season. It seems like they managed to get the result, and something that they maybe probably wouldn't have got early in the year, I don't think.
It's a bit of a bad period for Bo'ness. I mean, the result doesn't... I know a lot of people were saying, it would be good for Broomhill to go and win that one, but it's not a eye-opening result or anything like that for me. I think in fairness they should have won it, or they I would expect them to win it, because Bo'ness are in as I say, three defeats in a row. Fair enough, they've been playing some top teams, but took full advantage there. Obviously, it was still a close game. I think Broomhill only won 3-2. Obviously, Bo'ness, I think, got kind of back into the game. I don't really put much significance on that result, in fairness. I don't want to sound too harsh, but I wouldn't get overly excited if I was Broomhill with that result, to be honest. In fairness, Bo'ness, we have mentioned, they're a decent side, but they are going through a bit of a rough patch after obviously losing to East Kilbride a few weeks ago.
Bo'ness started the season really well, but seemed to kind of be backpedaling a little bit now from this that open goal. You would say probably started quite poorly in a lot of ways. They obviously went through that run of losses and bounced back last week, but 2 wins now in the bounce, and look like they're getting it together. I think I'm quite chuffed to see the likes of Ryan Tierney and Evan Malley doing really well for open goal, because there was that big change, and those guys could have quite well been put out the side, and because Si maybe wanted to build his own team and get his own guys in. But I think from the bits I've seen so far of the documentary, that suggested I'd go and watch them play and identified the guys like Evan and Ryan Tierney and Regan O'Sullivan, and I think Ewan Griffiths, but I think Ewan Griffiths obviously, I think he's moved on now from open goal. But it's great for me. I'm quite happy. I'm delighted to see Evan Malley and Ryan Tierney, as I say, doing well, because I think Ryan Tierney was even on the bench for a few games, not up until maybe a couple of weeks ago, and he came back in, he's got some goals, and so has Evan. Both those guys probably were well first choice, and probably not brought in maybe his first choice to begin with, and they've obviously shown in training or whatever, and they've got their start and done well. So I'm delighted for those guys, because they were the, I guess, OG Broomhills, not open goal. That's a mouthful, but yeah, great result to 4th, I think it is now in the table. So obviously they've lost a few games at the start, but they're climbing their way up, and they're going to be up. I think they're going to be up there. They're not going to necessarily challenge still, I don't think. I think for me it's clear that Rangers B and East Kilbride are going to be the sides to battle out for the title, but don't expect to see open goal now kind of fall away too much. I think they'll be in amongst that kind of certainly top half of the table, and we'll see what happens over the course.
Just to add to the point that they should be, who they've brought in, we've probably been easy on them, maybe not the last couple of weeks when they've been losing, but they should be up there.
Next game then, Cowdenbeath 3, Gretna 2008 0. Cowdenbeath keep themselves away from the bottom of the table. Gretna's manager Stephen Hartfield resigns after the match as well. It's not looking good for Gretna, I think. I know I'm not going to sound smug because I've said it all along, but certainly it's no surprise to me that Gretna are where they are and struggling, and Cowdenbeath are also quite a poor side as well, and probably thinking in Stephen's Hartfield's case, he probably looked at that game and said, well, hopefully I can get a result here and that'll keep his keep a head above water, but they obviously haven't got the result yesterday. He's probably just thought, we've run out of ideas here, I can't really do much more, so he's decided to resign it. Poor afternoon for Gretna, but fair play to Cowdenbeath getting a win and a clean sheet.
Yeah, 2 wins in a row for Cowdenbeath. I don't want to say they've turned a leaf, because I don't think they have. They've played against, in fairness, teams in that sort of bottom fight. But in fairness, I mean, a convincing win, 3-0. Scott Sinclair, Sean Slavin and Aidan Gilmartin doing the job there. But Look, can be for I think they have certainly improved their performances, obviously, with the 2 wins. From what I've seen of their highlights, I've not seen them since the WBT game, but they do have good players there. But yeah, again, I wouldn't get overly excited about the results. But yeah, they've not turned a new leaf. And what I would say though about Gretna, I kind of feel sorry for Stephen Hatfield actually, because it always came across that he really cared about the club, and obviously it's one of the things he said when he resigned. It was kind of a difficult decision. Cares about the community, but you've got to ask yourself, and I think I asked the question yesterday of Gretna, what has to change there? Something. But out of all the Lowland League clubs since we've been doing this podcast, I think they've had 4 or 5 managers, which is more than averaging about one a season. I mean, there's certain things I know. From an outside perspective, I believe they would have a better season who they brought in player wise, but there's just something not right there. A lot of the fans are very divided on what has to happen in terms of player recruitment, in terms of local players, or it has to be local players. It's not really a great look for if you're coming from Edinburgh or Glasgow, wherever, and you're not really feeling that welcome. That's probably not ideal. But the issue Gretna have is they're competing locally against Carlisle, City, Penrith, teams like that, probably Queen of the South and other teams like that. But how good local players of Gretna are, I don't know. Certainly there are really good some really good South players, but is it the same? I know a lot of people think, "Oh, this is disrespectful," saying that. How is it? I mean, if you look at somewhere like Fife, I think in Scotland, Fife have the most football clubs per mile anywhere else in Scotland. I mean, Fife for me, obviously I'm a Fifer, so I'm going to be a bit biased, but Fife for me is all about football. There's hardly a town in Fife without a football team, and some have 2 or 3, you know what I mean? So is that the same down south, or kind of near the border, Gretna way, or it's not? It's not really. I mean, you think of sort of, in fairness to Gala Ferradine or Gala Shields, I mean, that's more of a sort of rugby area. Same with like Selkirk. I don't know so much about Gretna, but it's just not the same. So I don't know if local is the way to go. Certainly fans feel it is. That's up to them, but I don't think they're going to be successful if they go that approach, because they have still got cracking players. I think they just have to work on what they have. It's a weird one, but that's just outsider's perspective. I don't know the complete ongoings there. If guys are still training separately like they did last year, I thought that kind of was resolved, but maybe not.
Yeah, I guess you're right about if it's the whole kind of trying to get local guys and maybe struggling to get those guys in, because that's the emphasis of kind of how they're trying to do the recruitment. What I would say though is that the side that they are getting, obviously they're probably one of the kind of higher level teams in that kind of that region versus some of the teams that you mentioned. In terms of that, they should be able to go and get some of the best players in that region. You would have thought, I guess, if you're competing with the South of Scotland League, for example, for good football players, you would imagine that they would be able to get plenty of guys. But again, it comes back to the whole kind of thing where the kind of region is quite sparsely populated in the first place. Like you mentioned about Fife. Fife is quite densely populated. The west of Scotland is quite densely populated between the likes of Glasgow, Ayrshire, for example. Edinburgh, similar. And then you even go up towards Dundee. And the thing about down there is it's so far. I was looking at something the other day and I was trying to work out where I think Dalbeattie were versus the location that I was looking at, and it was still like about an hour's travel, and it was like somewhere, it was like near kind of towards Newton Stewart, and I was like, well, it's still like about an hour away. Like, you think it's all close, but it's not really. So that's maybe the problem, is that it's so sparsely populated, and they probably are, in terms of the mentioned those Glasgow players, like the kind of Glasgow-based players. They're probably competing against Glasgow teams, because guys are probably going like that. Oh well, I can go to Gretna for, I don't know, £100 a week or whatever. I can go to a Glasgow-based team and play maybe 2 divisions lower, but I'll get the same £100 and I don't need to drive 2 hours here, 2 hours back, or every couple of nights if I'm training down that way. And maybe that's the problem as well. They're maybe struggling to get decent players in general. But yeah, I think for me, it's not going great for Gretna, but it's the same thing all over. I think we always say it, that probably fortunate for Gretna this year that Dalbeattie have started so poorly and don't look like they're going to really change anything there, unless But that would be the worry, I think, for Gretna would be is if Dalbeattie, if they manage to turn the corner and get going and get their seasons kicked off and start to get a few wins under their belt and beating teams and getting the squad right. But I don't think that'll happen now personally. But it's looking pretty poor for Gretna. But I hope they turn around. I don't want to see.
I don't think they will.
But I don't. Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is there. I mean, fans can blame players that are not a part of the community, but then results have not been good enough for the last 4 years, in my opinion. Yep. For a team like Gretna, and they were successful in the past. A lot of people may forget this, but they were a really good East of Scotland side. So I don't know what has to change if it's the league getting stronger, other teams coming into it, and they're just kind of finding their natural side. But Gretna are a weird one, in my opinion. I don't know if it's you think the chairman's probably doing the right things because they have spent a wee bit of money on getting, I would say, better players in this season. Obviously, they redone the pitch at Raydale, so I don't know. It's maybe a feeling about the club, or we were kind of near the bottom last year. Let's just accept that we're going to be near the bottom. I don't think that's acceptable. If you're a football team, maybe just the way I am, it's easy for me to say it. Not involved in football, just chatting shit on a podcast. But if I was involved, I would be wanting to win every game. It's maybe again a mentality, a belief thing about that club. I don't know. It's hard to put a finger on, really.
Next game then, Cumbernauld Colts 2, Heart of Midlothian B 1. Another decent result for Cumbernauld Colts, yeah.
Yeah, back to winning ways after their sort of streak ended. Cole McIntyre and amongst the goals again. He seems to be a really good pickup. I've been watching a few of the highlights and stuff like that, and I'm really been really impressed with him early on. And it's not, in fact, I tell a lie. I do tend to spot talented guys quite early, but he's certainly impressed me early on. In fairness to Hearts, I think they were down to 10 men towards the end of the game, but. Yeah, it's an impressive win for Colts because, in fairness, we kind of said last time they have been playing the lower side. Certainly, I wouldn't kind of include Hearts into that sort of bracket. Fairly mid-table where I have them. I mean, they're not one of the higher sides, but certainly they have beaten what I would probably say, in fairness, so far, probably better teams than Cumbernauld Colts. So, it's a good result from the Colts.
Next game then, Dalbeattie Star lost 6-0 to Civil Service Draws. I mean, probably quite expected Civil to put a few past Dalbeattie there.
It's another sort of one for Dalbeattie. I think the one sort of thing about Strollers is it seemed like all the players were getting on the act. I think every goal was by a different scorer, so it's a tough one for Dalbeattie. Our expectations, I think, after every week and heavy results, we're not really expecting much for them. Civil, we know how good they are when they get going. And in fairness, I think they've kind of went quite high up in the league. I think they're 6 now, which is kind of, I think the last time we spoke, they were, I think, 11th or something like that. So that's probably a more natural kind of position of where I expect Strollers to be kind of lingering about that top 6 area, I would say. But fair play, smashing result. Dalbeattie, again, still worrying about them, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it's not looking great for Dalbeattie, which is disappointing. When we hope we can sort it out, but I think the writing's on the wall already for me in terms of Dalbeattie. I just don't see where they get a win at this point from, and I don't really know what's going wrong either. And I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard, long season for Dalbeattie for sure. Next game then was probably the surprise result of the week was Edinburgh University beating East Kilbride 3-2 at K Park. A fantastic result for Edinburgh Uni. Disappointing for EK, a team that we've talked a lot about and very positively and had a great start to the season. Seems like they've had a bit of a turnaround since a certain Chris Pow posted some sort of video of manager Kevin Rukiewicz' radio interview with a certain podcaster during the week.
Oh, you're not blaming it on me, are you? That
Could be.
Kevin's not been bothered about that.
Distraction, maybe. I don't know.
It's complacency on the pitch, I would say. There's nothing more. I think he said it. I don't think, in fairness to Kevin, I don't think he's distracted by anything we say or anything like that. So, which is fair enough. Yeah, probably doesn't even listen. Yeah, exactly. I know some of the guys do, but Complacency. I think that's what he said in his interview. It's just a wee bit of complacency. They drew T. Stallinger, in fairness, a wonder goal by Dean Watson. In fairness, Shire, I think, deserved their point and maybe more. Edinburgh Uni are a bit of a strange one. They're a wee bit like Strollers recently, where obviously Gary Jordan at Strollers loves beating East Kilbride. He's got a pretty decent record of beating them, and Edinburgh Uni are getting a wee bit like that. Obviously, last season they beat them at K Park 3-2, the same scoreline. I think the game at East Peffermill was 4-4, so they were undefeated against EK last season. You can't really put a finger on it sometimes. I think I don't know if what Dorian would have said there. It's a lot of the same guys at Edinburgh Uni. It's not the same as kind of Stirling, where the guys sort of stay for 3-4 years and then leave. Edinburgh Uni have a very loyal squad, I would say. Guys like David Maskery, who got one of the goals, has obviously been there for years. He knows the level really well. And in fairness to David's a really decent Lowland League player. You always see him in amongst the goals for Edinburgh Uni. So there's obviously other guys as well. But I'm sure Dorian would have said, well, guys, we beat them last year at K Park, go out and do the same thing, and that will give them a wee bit of a lift. In fairness, it seemed like Edinburgh Uni were on top the majority of that game and fully deserved the 3 points. I mean, it's albeit I'm talking a wee bit about history last season. I would not have expected Edinburgh Uni to go out and do that to them this season. But Edinburgh, we've said it many times, we called it quite early. The difference between the teams near the bottom and Edinburgh Uni is that Edinburgh Uni can do these sort of things. They can come away with results when you're not expecting them to, whereas possibly, obviously Dalbeattie, Gretna, these sort of teams can't. Dalbeattie probably could have done previously. They, as I said, mentioned at Islecroft, but Edinburgh Uni are always pulling out a shock result here and there, and they do it every season, and that's just another good result for them there.
I think that's the beauty of the Lowland League, that something like that can happen like fairly regularly. A team, you probably look at the form and say, East Kilbride, that's a walkover for them, and they'll get that result no problem, because the way they started, we've obviously mentioned East Kilbride to death in this podcast already this season. They've started really well and they're up at top, and deservedly so. But yeah, you could easily find a game like that where the team just doesn't turn up, whether it was because of, like you said, complacency. Maybe they turned up thinking we're at home, we're playing a team towards the bottom of the league, and it should be an easy 3 points. And for whatever reason, they've just not quite managed to get the result. But yeah, I mean, absolutely fair play to Edinburgh Uni. I mean, good result for them. They need as many points as they can get, because they're going to be at the bottom of that table almost pretty much all season, we expect. Again, it's Fox, and there's probably worse teams than them in the league this year. But yeah, fair play and congrats to those guys.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that East Kilbride had a weakness fairly early doors, and it seems to be creeping in again. The last few matches, certainly Dean Watson's goal for Shire was certainly a part of that. But they always seem like there's a lot of space in that 18-yard line, and I'll be interested to see if they will release the Edinburgh Uni highlights. But I'm assuming, there's no guys closing that sort of area, just outside the penalty box, and they're almost giving teams a free hit sometimes. And East Kilbride really need to work on that, because I don't know if maybe an Andy Black or someone needs to fill that gap, but that's where they're getting punished. And it's pretty easy to see, so it's not something that Bill Orr or Kevin Rutkowitz probably doesn't know about. But they need to at least sort of push out or do something about that gap. And if they close down Dean Watson or close that space, I mean, he's not going to be scoring a banger against them. You know what I mean? So I did hear a few of the Edinburgh Uni goals might have been from that sort of area. I've not seen the highlights yet, so we'll wait and see if that. But that certainly seems like a weakness of East Kilbride, in my opinion.
Next game then, East Stirlingshire 2, Trinent Juniors 2. First game in charge for new Trinent manager Colin Nish, 2-2 draw. Decent result, I think you called it, Chris, 2 each.
Yeah, one in about $1 million. No, it's not that bad, obviously, my record. But East Stirlingshire coming off that really decent result against East Kilbride. Not won a game so far in the league. I felt they would have been right up for it. Obviously, Trinent, new manager to impress. Probably not had the time to really sort of settle with the squad. Cammy Ross back in the league, he's a brilliant player. Saw a lot of him at Broxburn, during what I like to call the COVID years, because obviously Broxburn were doing a lot of live streaming. Cammy, happy to see him back, obviously, at the Central Belt. But yeah, 2-2 is how I called it, and 2-2 is what it was. I did hear East Stirlingshire were very unlucky, because Trinent, 2 late goals to get back into it. A lot of the Shire fans seemed really disappointed not to hold on to the win, but look, it's always tough. It's always a sickener when you're losing late goals. In fairness for Trinent to come back into that, but yeah, Shire. I think that you just need that first win, Shire, because Shire have a good team. I think there's probably not a lot of depth in that team, but they do have a good team still. But yeah, they seem to be the draw masters. Certainly, they were last season, breaking the record number of draws, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's going to be the same this year with East Stirlingshire.
Yeah, it looks like it. I think I've already had 5, I think, this season. Eight games or something like that, which is some fate already. I thought Shire would get the win personally. I think I said to you beforehand, we talked about it on Saturday morning, that I thought that Shire would get the win. That they seem to be slowly building up. As you mentioned, the result against East Kilbride is a good result and something they could have, I felt, build on to get that win. Trinent probably a little bit not all over the place, is probably the wrong phrase, but disjointed with having the manager left and the new manager only coming in kind of towards the end of the week and things like that. So wasn't too sure what I'd expect from Trinent. Obviously, I'm keeping an eye on that result, given that the Buffs managed to get a result in the Scottish Cup replay. Will Trinent await us in the next round of the Scottish Cup. So I've been keeping an eye on what Trinent are up to, just purely for that reason. So
yeah, I'm not giving you any hints, mate. Favouritism and all that.
I need to even get a wee scout over in the east of Scotland to go and scope them out and see what they're all about. Moving on then, the final game on Saturday was Gallifreyan Rovers versus Berwick Rangers. Berwick got a 2-0 win away to Gala.
Yeah, they brought back Michael Travis from Edinburgh. Really good defender. He was on loan last season. Seemed like a really good transfer. Was someone that kind of settled the squad. But again, I'm probably being a wee bit too harsh this week, but it's not an eye-opener for me. Gala have been in a horrible bit of form. They've not been playing well. Again, I would expect Berwick to go out and win that, and they did. I'm not sure what's going on with Gala. I think Jimmy Scott played the game. He's obviously kind of playing player-manager at the moment. Whether that's a choice or not because of the number of injuries and whatever else Gala have had. They're not in a really good form at the moment, and they're certainly not. Shouldn't be a threat to Berwick. Berwick will be obviously happy they're back to winning ways, but again, I'm not overly excited about Berwick beating Gala 2-0, and I don't think Berwick fans should be either, in all honesty. But yeah, bright spot Michael Travis coming back to the club. That's a really good signing for them in terms of a really experienced player, but have to do more, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's still plenty more to come from Berwick for us, and we'll be keeping a close eye. But decent result, maybe that will kickstart the season. We talked about last week having obviously kind of not ambition, but like the way they were kind of approaching maybe the cup games and things like that. We found that a bit strange, and the plan I think they mentioned was to focus on the league, and certainly getting a result is good, but they have to build on that and kick on and try and string a few results, but they're not going to be up there challenging for me now. I think they'll be probably finish roughly where they are, mid-table. Don't see maybe a slight improvement from where they are in the league just now, but certainly I don't expect too much more from Berwick this season.
Still a long season to go.
Absolutely.
And the proof's in the pudding. Results are everything, and we can only judge teams on the results, so as always.
Rangers B and Celtic B, the B team Old Firm, if you like, was postponed because obviously the big Old Firm was on, or the Glasgow Derby, whatever outside you sit on, and some people get a wee bit pissy if you say the Old Firm these days, so don't want to upset anyone. Old Firm, whatever that's called, that was postponed, presumably because they want to play in front of a lot more fans. And the other game was played today. It was Cali Braves versus University of Stirling, and University of Stirling beat Cali Braves 3-1. and they move up to 8th in the table. Cali Braves still sitting 3rd, despite defeat.
It's a tough one for Cali Braves, obviously. They've been on such good form lately, but we know Stirling Uni are a good team, can do that to any teams. I wouldn't be too disheartened being a Cali Braves fan. I think some of them are getting a wee bit excited, obviously, with East Kilbride losing. They kind of thought, oh, this is our opportunity to maybe get a wee bit closer to them. But in fairness, I love the ambition, I really do, but I don't think I'm expecting Braves to be right at the top, albeit they are doing fantastically well this season up until today when Stirling beat them. But there's a wee bit of a caveat to that game of Gary, the usual Twitter guy for Stirling Uni, wasn't there. Obviously, someone had put Ben McIver Redwood as BMR, so I don't know if that's a new nickname for him. But as I said, there's too many Bens in that Stirling Uni squad anyway. So I'm all happy for a few nicknames. So BMR sits well for me, but. Yeah, good result for Stirling Uni. After a few tough ones, actually. I did expect the reaction after they got beat, I think 6-0 against Celtic B, which was, a learning curve, as Chris called it. So, you probably did expect them to react today up against a decent, informed Brave side up until that point.
Ben, certainly a good name. I would agree. It's,
I never even realised.
It's a great name. For sure.
I never even made that comparison.
It's all about the Bens, isn't it? Right, yeah, absolutely. Come on, Chris. Yeah, so fair play. Fair play to Stirling Uni. We know they're a good outfit and they can upset and beat anyone. Cali Braves are also a team on form. They're sitting top of the table for a reason. But fair play to Uni getting the result, and they'll probably kick on for that. I think. Chris, this is.
I could have made a better joke about that if I just remembered your name was Ben in that moment.
I was surprised there was no mention. 100%. But moving on, then we'll look at what happened in the East of Scotland on Saturday. Broxbar Athletic won 4-2 against Socky Juniors. Crossgates Primrose won 2-1 against Pennycook Athletic. The Donald Bluebell lost 2-1 to Haddington Athletic. Inverkeithing Hill Swifts lost 2-1 to Musselburgh Athletic. The Lithgow Rose beat Jeanfield Swifts 4-2. Lothian Thistle Hutchison Vale lost 5-1 to Blackburn United, and Tynecastle beat Vale Leithen 4-1. We'll start with, I guess, the Lithgow Rose score. Another good result. Jeanfield Swift are a good side. Good result for them to stay up towards the top of the table.
Yeah, that was probably out of all the fixtures in the Premier Division, that was probably the one that you would look at, given the fact that two top East of Scotland sides. Lithgow Rose at home, to be fair, they're a fantastic side. They're finally kind of showing the last sort of few weeks. Based on my prediction, I always thought Lithgow, on paper, certainly are head and shoulders above anyone else in that league. With all due respect to their teams, I think they are. But they're finally showing it, and that's the type of results they need against the likes of obviously the other top teams like Jeanfield and Mark Stowe. He's going to again be scoring, a lot of goals this season. I'm really unsure of why he's not been picked up by a team. I think Lithgow have a plan for him, obviously, to kind of lead them into higher up the leagues if that's, he's still a young guy. So, but yeah, they've got such a great team there. I don't want to total salivate over them too much, but it's a tough one for Jeanfield, I respect, and they've also got a top team as well. But Lithgow at home, it's always going to be tough, and the result doesn't surprise me.
It's probably an even better result for Lithgow Rose because Pennycook dropping points as well to Crossgates Primrose, a 2-1 win for Crossgates Primrose. I didn't realise Crossgates Primrose are actually quite far up this season and doing quite well, but Pennycook dropping their first points this season. They'd won 5 in the bounce up until Saturday there, which makes it kind of a bit more tighter at the top. I think Pennycook are still 2 points ahead, but talking about league tables, it's only just start September, but it's one of these ones that certainly you can't win a league in September, but you could certainly lose one. That's my feeling about league tables certainly at the moment, and good results for Crossgates and keeps them kind of up there and kind of close to the likes of Rose and Donald Bluebell, for example.
Crossgates had a really good season last year. I think I might have touched on it a wee bit a few weeks ago. Crossgates, obviously, I saw them early pre-season against Spartans. I know the team fairly well. with some of the guys, obviously, like Brian Ritchie, who scored the winner. He was at Kelty, Finn Graham. And there's some other lads there, obviously, that I know fairly well. The manager's obviously been on the podcast before. It's a tough one, obviously. Everyone knows I like Pennycook. But Crossgates, again, I think they're going to have another smashing season. They were fairly high up the table last year. They've got a really good manager. And they've got really good players. And I guess what we were talking about, I was kind of berating Gretna for having, the thought of local lads. But in fairness, Crossgates have certainly local lads in that team. But I think it's different compared to, as I said, the Fife area compared to the Gretna area. But they went with the local lads as the likes of Genefield and other teams do. But great result. Unfortunate for Pennycook, but I guess they'll bounce back quick enough, I think.
Okay, moving on then to the South of Scotland League. There's 3 matches played there, and Freetown won 3-1 against Newton Stewart. Lochar Thistle won 5-2 against Lochmaben. Hopefully I got that right for the people that slagged me the last time. Nithsdale Wanderers won 2-0 against Wigtown Bladnoch. Probably the biggest talking point of the South of Scotland League this week was the result on, I think it was Friday night, against Madannindale beat St Cuthbert's 7-1. St Cuthbert's obviously last year's league champions, played in the playoff, the Pyramid playoff against Darvel and Tunent, but absolutely scudded, shall we say, off of Madannindale, Chris.
Yeah, that was an eye-opening result in the South. Yeah, I'm sure the St Cuthbert's side has changed, obviously, since Jordan's left for Dalbeattie. They've probably not got the same boys there, but yeah, that's a really good result for the mids, in fairness, but 7-1's, yeah, it's not looking great for St Cuthbert's this season. It's going to be a difficult one. It's probably I don't think it's going to be as such a sort of scary transition as it is for Dalbeattie, obviously, because they're a league above, but certainly there will be a transitional period for St Cuthbert's there. But yeah, the mids good on their day usually. Obviously, we've kind of talked up Creetown, Abbey Vale, and Lochar Thistle, who's Lochar Thistle obviously won and got Ian Anderson there. Yeah, it's a weird one so far in the South because we've not really had much to go on, have we, Ben?
Nah, there's still not that kind of full fixture list, for example, and we only certain teams playing in certain weeks and things like that. You're not really getting a true picture of kind of form. Not seeing teams playing week in, week out to kind of get that kind of understanding of form. Like you mentioned, St Cuthbert's there, they played Friday night, but the week before that, they were in the cup, obviously, against Lithgow and got, I think, beaten 9-0 or something like that. It was the week before. So you're not getting to see the true form of teams at the moment, certainly. So we'll just keep an eye on what's going on, and hopefully there's more to come for the South of Scotland League once they get more of a kind of routine fixtures, and we get to see kind of what the form kind of guide maybe looks like in terms of the teams that are involved.
We talked about Mark Stowe and Linlithgow earlier. Obviously, I better say that Mark scored 6 against St Cuthbert's in that game. I was kind of brought up by the Linlithgow assistant manager because I was giving David Grant a fair bit of credit for his 9. I mean,
all right, okay.
Still 3 less though. Still 3 less than David Grant did for Dunny Pacey. So, but no, Mark Stowe. Yeah, I'm sure his name will come up for a fair bit this season when we talk about Linlithgow and the East of Scotland.
Absolutely. Moving on then to the West of Scotland Football League Premier League. We'll start on Friday night. There was 2 matches played. Darvel beat Arthurlie 4-0. Bees beat Pollock 3-2 at Newlandsfield. We'll just start there, Chris, to begin with. Darvel, I mean, kind of what we come to expect from Darvel, I think, now that everyone knows they're a great side. Playing against a team like Arthurlie, newly promoted, we expected to Darvel to do well. I think, though, listen to some of the stuff in the commentary about the game, certainly it was probably a tale of 2 halves for Darvel. They started well. I think they were up maybe 3-0 at half time and only managed another goal in the second half. Probably chilled out to the foot off the gas a little bit and got the job done. But yeah, Darvel are a great side, and they're going to be if they don't win the league and someone else does in the West of Scotland Premier League, you're going to have done a good job to beat that Darvel side, because as much as it pains me to say, they're a brilliant team. They've got all the cover. They've just made that recent signing, Thomas Riley from Kelty, which is a a great pickup as far as I'm concerned. Thomas is a local Coinning boy, and I'd love to see him play for the Buffs. I think he's a great footballer. Would be great in any midfield at this level, and will do really well at Darvel. So, yeah, totally expected that from Darvel personally.
Yeah, Thomas Riley, a guy I know from Kelty, always a fantastic guy in terms of even off the pitch and on the pitch. Brilliant footballer. I think he'll do well with Darvel, and obviously I think Alan McKenzie's still in amongst the scoring as well for Darvel. He still seems to be going, and that's the type of side that wins a league, isn't it? That have they could have players missing in terms of suspensions or injuries, but they have these players coming in that can get you goals and a bit of quality. Darvel have too much depth for this level.
100%. I mean, that's abundantly obvious now, as you say. In terms of their forward line, they've got Lewis Morrison, Scott Ferguson, Ross Caldwell, Alan McKenzie is your 4 strikers ultimately. So any of those 4 boys are going to get you goals. Doesn't matter who's playing with who or how they're set up. That all 4 of those are capable of getting 1, maybe 2 goals a game. If they're playing. Scott Ferguson scored an absolute barrel last year. Lewis Morrison came from Hurlford mid-season. He was brilliant for Hurlford. Don't know as much about Ross Caldwell certainly, but I know he's goal scoring records.
Experienced high up.
Yeah, very well in previous divisions and things like that. And Alan McKenzie put 3 past us last week or the week before, and you can just see he's got the talent there to score goals, and that's what you need. And ultimately, and they have the guys at the back. I mean, even if you look at the game on Friday night, Ross Meakin scores an absolute wonder goal for Darvel. Outside of the right boot from about 30 yards or something. That's an absolutely ridiculous goal at any level. But yeah, Darvel are superb.
I remember probably one of the best long range goals I've ever seen was Thomas Riley against Stirling Uni. He, honest to God, at Fourth Bank, it must have been from the halfway line. I'm sure a few Kelty fans, if they're still listening, probably know what I'm talking about. But probably, I don't even know where that came from Thomas. But yeah, I still remember that goal at Fourth Bank. But yeah, another kind of, I guess, an eye-opening result for your old mate Straney. The Beefy Bakes, as you call them, beating Pollock, who I quite. I see that big smile on your face. I know. Thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, great result for Bees. Yeah, I was quite surprised. I thought Pollock would have. I thought it'd have been. There certainly knew it was going to be close. Did I think Bees would have won at Newlands Field? I didn't, be honest.
Yeah.
Be honest with you, but there's no denying Chris Strange's a great manager. I think he said that all along. And great coach and knows what to do and get a team playing. And he's made some good signs. He brought in, for example, Andy Monk, who I thought was a great player when he was at Broomhill, and he was kind of unlucky with injury and things like that at Broomhill. But I always thought he would have done a great job for the Buffs, for example. But never quite signed up. But Chris has got him in at B, and he grabbed 2 on Friday night to get in the 3-2 victory. Carlo Monti also making a return to the West of Scotland Premier League as a trialist on Friday night for Beath. It was one of those ones that last I'd heard that Carlo was meant to be going to play, I think, in Malta or Italy or something like that. But he's back. He's playing. He was a trialist on Friday for Beath. I think he came on for about 15-20 minutes or something like that and got a game. But yeah, great result for Beath. I think they're sitting probably third in the table after. We were all talking about after 4 games, but great result, and nobody's surprised that Straney's got them going, and they'll do well this season. Beath, I'm absolutely sure of it. But who knows where they'll end up. Next game, moving on to Saturday then, it was Cambuslang Rangers were at home to Clydebank, and it was a 3-0 win for the Bankies. Clydebank finally getting a result and look like they're kicking on, Chris.
I think we both kind of respect Clydebank and think they're a good solid outfit, but it's maybe not kind of the season's maybe not started off the greatest for them, but they're too good not to start picking up points. And in fairness to Cambuslang, we kind of called it earlier that they probably might struggle since coming up. So it's not a surprising result, but it is good to see the Clydebank getting quite a convincing victory and a clean sheet there. what they've been missing, really.
Yeah, I always think of Clydebank like in ourselves, quite similar teams in a lot of respects, and probably not quite the teams at the very, very top of the division, the Auchinlecks, the Darvils, the Polos are probably, I always think, a kind of a step between them and kind of us sometimes. And if I'm being honest, and Clydebank are probably in that bracket as well. So yeah, great result. I think probably as expected though, in terms of getting the win, but good to get a clean sheet because I think they've been struggling for defensively certainly in the last kind of few weeks, and done quite well to get the win there. All right then, moving on into the next game, probably a surprise result of the week was Petershill 1, Auchinleck Talbot 1 in New Petershill Park. I mean, that's a result I did not expect to see happen at all, but fair play to Petershill getting a draw against Auchinleck. I think we've said it before about Auchinleck. I kind of wonder if it's their time is up. I think that obviously Darvel coming into the league and Paul look a decent enough side, and the kind of Auchinleck's kind of golden period maybe looks like it's maybe on the kind of heading towards a kind of decline. Obviously, the missing guys that have left in the summer and things like that, a couple of injuries and struggling, I think, for a bit of form. And Petershill, a new side to the league, and playing on the Astro probably doesn't help as well. But yeah, I don't really know what's going on at Auchinleck. I think it's going to be an odd season for them. But Petershill still probably going to struggle. Probably still imagining to get relegated. Unless you can do something off the back of this result, Chris.
It's a fantastic result. There was shocks this sort of weekend. That was certainly a surprising one, but I don't think you can ever sort of discount Auchinleck. It's a poor result, but I think you might be right though. Certainly, 20 years almost the dominance of it seems like Tommy Sloan and the players that he's had there. I mean, they've had we're talking about maybe a golden generation, but certainly a golden spell. But I mean, that is 20 years of dominance. I mean, I wouldn't count them out ever really. So I think you're right. There has been a lot of obviously sort of behind the scenes stuff, players retiring, players taking a break, guys moving on as well last season. So it's a difficult one. But Tommy Sloan's got that record of building new teams with different players. So wouldn't count him out. But Tommy, in fairness to me, is getting a bit older. Maybe it is coming to that point where he's looking for a successor. Ben, I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Maybe towards the end of the season, I don't think he's going to walk out mid-season unless they have an absolute shambles of a season. They're a good cup side. There'll be plenty of cups to play for in terms of Auchinleck, and they'll be up there. Absolutely no doubt about it in terms of the league. They'll be there or thereabouts, but it just seems to me there's a change happening at Talbot just now, and will be interesting to see how that plays out.
If anyone deserves some time at any team, it's Tommy Sloan at Auchinleck. I'm sure he'll have it. Yeah. Obviously, he'll have the backing of everyone. He's not many people at their current clubs can be considered legends. He's certainly a legend at Auchinleck, and I think you're right. I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens with them over the next sort of year or two, or the next season, certainly.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on. Bring you all the news as we hear it in terms of what's happening in the West, because obviously I'm keeping a close eye on things over here, and Chris covers everything else that happens in pretty much the rest of Scottish football, pretty much. Moving on to Chris's beloved Largs Thistle, beating Cumnock Juniors 2-1. I've said a lot about Cumnock and how they started really well. Talked up Brian McGinty as a manager, but fair play to Arnie and get Stuart Dawson getting a result there at home to Cumnock.
Another surprising result when I looked at that fixture. I think I made a comment to you. I was actually thinking of that as one of the sort of the games of the week or whatever. But then it would have been a heart over head type thing. And obviously, I think Cumnock's been in the game of the week as well. But it certainly was an interesting fixture. Did I think Largs would get the result there? Absolutely not. It's a surprise. We spoke a wee bit about Cumnock so far this season. Brian McGinty and the players there, fantastic for Largs, but they need to do more of that to keep me happy in terms of me not worrying about them, I should say, for potential relegation this season. But fantastic result, full credit.
There are 2 games then in the West Scotland League was Kirkintar Rob Roy lost 2-1 to Glenafton Athletic, and Hereford beat Troon 2-0. So that rounds up pretty much the West Scotland Premier League. There was 3 games in the Scottish Cup replays. Hoyt Royal Albert lost 3-0 to Carnoustie Panmure. Hillbeath Hawthorn won 3-0 against Irvine Meadow, and my Cowan Rangers won 2-1 against Rutherglen Glen Cairn. Which one of the 2 games shall we? We'll gloss over the Carnoustie Panmure Hoyt Royal Albert because we probably don't know a lot about that game. There's probably plenty of talking points in the other 2 games, certainly. We'll start with the Hillbeath Hawthorns 3 of a medal now.
Yeah, Hawes are a bit of an odd one. Again, we've talked a wee bit about them. I think they've got a better team than they did last year. Did I expect more of a game for the Medal coming to Kears Park? I think so. I didn't think it would be as straightforward as a 3-0 win for Hawes, given the fact that it was a replay. But fair credit to the Hawes, it's a really good result. To be fair, again, I've said this a lot during this podcast, but probably not surprising. Meda, kind of not a team I really rate. It's probably going to cause a bit of hassle. But yeah, again, it's not Ben saying this, it's me. Not a really massive team I rate in the west of Scotland this season, certainly. But certainly they are capable on their day. So again, it's full credit to the Hawes. They're getting through after going to a replay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I come at this, if I say anything
bias or whatever,
bad about Meda, I'll be getting dug out for being negative and hating the Meda. But I'm looking at this from as objectively as possible from a podcast perspective, and from a footballing perspective, I haven't really seen anything from Meda at all this season. And even going further back than that as well, I didn't. They've got some good players, good individual players like Callum Graham, for example. The striker they got from Pollock is a good player. Beyond that, there's not a lot in that side that I'm really that impressed by. I think Paul Byrne, the left back, looks quite decent. He was at Claybank the year before, but apart from that, there's not an awful lot in that team that I'm saying to myself that to be worried about. I think there's teams like, for example, like Rutherglen. When you look at them, who we played yesterday, they've got players there that you're worried about.
Yeah.
There just wasn't anything much more than Callum Graham that really concerns me. I look at their defence, and the defence always looks pretty poor. It's very slow. The guys at the back are just not maybe quite cut out for it anymore. A couple of guys that have been there for a few years, and I think they brought in Brian Wharton from Pollock at the start of the season. Doesn't like even a shadow of the player they was at Pollock. I think he was a decent player for Pollock, but again, playing a good Pollock side, well organised, well drilled. But yeah, it doesn't shock me at all about Meadow. Even when you saw the result last week when they drew, I think they were probably like us quite lucky to get through to get into a replay. Certainly, Colin Spence and James Law have resigned this morning from Auchinleck, and yeah, I think they're probably the writing was on the wall for those guys. And
to be fair, Ben, I think you called it early. You said the management. You've been a wee bit like Mystic Meg, I think, a lot this year. In fairness to you, but you did feel there would managerial change if things didn't go Meda's way, and it certainly looks like you were spot on again. Quite annoyingly so, obviously, with Gretna and the Meda.
do I know what I'm talking about? Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. And then that's the thing. I mean, people I'm sure there'll be Meda fans that'll listen to this and they'll just take it as me being deliberately negative and biased towards Meda because I don't like them, because there are rivals, and I've not got a lot of time for sparings of managers never out our local paper worrying about the buffs, for example, and at least with him now moving on, we'll get a bit of peace and quiet, certainly from him. But I'm sure they'll get a good manager, and I don't doubt that at all. There'll be plenty of applicants for that job. If they ever made a job, because it's a good job. It's a big side. They've got decent money. They're a good team. They've got a good a decent ground certainly, and it's an old school kind of junior ground, and they've got their SFA
Yeah.
license. It's going to be an attractive job for many managers certainly. I would expect, and whether that's maybe I don't know, I can't think of any manager off the top of my head who would maybe be interested, but there'll be candidates there that'll be
Kevin Thompson.
Kevin Thompson. Yeah, I mean that'll be it.
Oh, I know that was a bit of a meme from the last
Imagine
episode.
Kevin Thompson rocked up at Irvine Meadow. That would be absolutely gold, man. But fair play him if he did, but I doubt it so much. But anyway,
that was a bit of a meme from the last episode.
Absolutely.
But,
I'm just worried that in case someone sets up some sort of like no context official catch-up Twitter account, because I think I said something like Davos superb or something like that earlier on. I'm thinking to myself, if someone does that, there's a few snippets they can get out of both of us here, and that'd certainly be one of them, Chris.
Well, if they think they can get snippets out of this, they should see the outtakes that we never post. But either way, Ben. Just before we sort of move on to the buff, James Latta, Colin Spence, as players, highly successful. Auchinleck, Talbot, predominantly, obviously, where they got their successes as players in junior football. But what do you think's next for them? Do you think they could continue in management and get another job?
I don't know enough about the two guys, kind of like the relationship or that. But the thing that always struck me about Spenny and Latta, they were down as kind of co-managers, and I found that a wee bit strange because from my perspective, it was always a lot of it was Colin Spence, and there wasn't a lot of involvement from Latta. See, it was always Spenny was in the paper and things like that, talking and on Twitter and being interviewed and stuff like that, and it seemed like James Latta sat in the background. So I don't know, maybe for them is it worth maybe them splitting up and going in their separate ways and being managers in their own right? Maybe that's not what they want. Maybe they are a duo and that's what they like, and it's just been unfortunate that it's not worked at Meadow this season for them. But yeah, I mean they'll go again. I think, as you said, they're fairly experienced, and they've done a decent job up until probably February of this year certainly, and it kind of just seemed to go south from there. I don't really know what kind of caused that, but yeah, I'm sure both of the guys will bounce back into jobs at some point, whether that's as maybe assistants or maybe managers in their own right. I don't expect that'll be the last we hear from Colin Spence or James Latta.
We need a wee bit more back and forth between Gorms and Spenny on the old Twitter. I don't think we mentioned it last time, but I think they were teammates at one point, weren't they? Actually,
yeah, I mean, they all played in that Auchinleck side. I mean, they all know each other well, and I know that they talk and stuff like that. Man, I mean, obviously managers talk around the whole league. They're all chatting to each other, but yeah, I mean, it's just a bit of banter. That's all it is. People read sometimes too much into it. But it's just banter, and I'm sure they're probably worse in private. That's just what you see on Twitter and things like that. But I mean, I think the one you're referring to, it was a case of it was like, I mean, I think it was 2 weeks after the whole kind of situation with Kevin Nicholl was still going on about in our local paper, and I was just like, come on, man, focus on. You've just been beaten 2-0 off Atherley, who had 9 men, and you're talking about the buff situation, for example. It just seemed a bit strange, but yeah, that's exactly I think what that is, and it's bad, and I like that. I think it's good to see that from our perspective. We've just got to make sure you back it up, and if you're going to kind of talk on Twitter like that, if you're a manager of a team, you make sure you're backing it up on the field. So yeah, it's all part of the fun and games of Scottish football. It happens plenty, so it's
and we enjoy it, and we enjoy it. I mean, absolutely. As long as it's no nothing malicious or that. Of course, teams clubs having goes at each other, players having goes at each other. It's all a part of it. You know what I mean?
Aye, there's a line. Everyone knows it. Like,
yeah.
Ultimately, if you cross it, then it's pretty poor. All right, final game then to talk about is the Mighty Buffs winning 2-1 against Lowland League Glencairn in the replay of the Scottish Cup preliminary round. Guess I was there as doing my old club duty. For us, started the game really well, brilliant. A brilliant first half again, like the week before. We started the game excellent and controlled a lot of the ball and created some good chances. Yeah, so 2 big goals from Dylan Mackin. I think Dylan comes under a lot of the microscope, a lot from our fans, and because his pedigree, or he's certainly played at a higher level, and if he's not scoring, then he's not doing his job, as people saying. But I think for me, Dylan's probably still adjusting at this level, but the system we're probably playing in now, we're missing Thomas Collins. It's a massive miss for Dylan, who has a guy playing up beside him who does a lot of his running and gets him the ball. But I mean, it's done well to get the two, get his ahead, and kind of unfortunate to lose Dom Boland to a red card. I think 35 minutes to go, which Dom was on a yellow from the first half, and I think he kind of probably wound the ref up in the beginning of the first half, or in the middle of the first half, by trying to kind of delay play a little bit by knocking the ball out of player's hand at a throw in, and probably could have got booked for that, and maybe should have been off at half time, but he's went for a silly handball and he's sent off. So I played the majority of the second half with 10 men. So it was a difficult game, but I think for me, when they score the first goal, there's that trepidation and concern that we're going back to what's happened before against us with Rutherglen. We've lost from worse positions, or we've certainly drawn from worse positions against Rutherglen in the past, and it was one of those ones like last week where we were lucky to get through in the 90 minutes. We got there, but we got the job done. So I think talked to Gorms after the match and did my post-match interview, and he said that he was very got to give the boys credit because he did dig in and made sure we got the job done. So that rounds up most of the matches from the different competitions involving non-league sides. Probably one other thing, Chris, we normally talk about boxing after the matches that we talk about, but certainly segued topic. We had Ben Spellman of Gretna, who kind of seemed to have a bit of a set to Barney, whatever you want to call it, with a fan in the cow and beef game on Saturday.
Yeah, never. Obviously, I'm from Fife. I know what our lot are like sometimes, and Fife's probably. I feel like I'm praising Fife, but also giving it a bad name sometimes. But yeah, certainly I've heard the shouts previously. We've heard it. I think we talked about it. We've not really talked up the crowd too much, apart from maybe occasions where it's maybe games we've been to, obviously like yourself at the Meda, for example, or Bonnyrigg, in the playoff game. Trying to think, when Kelty played Auchinleck years ago, there was obviously a few sort of rowdy Auchinleck fans. But I don't know if crowds are getting really worse from my perspective, but certainly there is a few questionable shouts sometimes. And look, Ben, for me, looked like a frustrated figure. Obviously, his team's just been beat 3-0. Shouts were made. He's went and confronted whoever it was. I actually thought the funniest part of the video I saw was there's obviously a committee guy at Gretna going running over Ben, behave, and all this sort of stuff. But it's quite embarrassing to see that from Ben. But there's probably a case where sometimes fans go over the line. I think. I'm not saying that's what's happened there, but we've all heard questionable shouts. I mean, even myself, there's sometimes where not so much recently or in recent years, but certainly there's times where I think about it and think, oh, fuck, maybe that was way too far in terms of, and it's mainly at refs for me, actually. It's not actually at players unless it's a Tottenham player, but but yeah, it's just, it wasn't a good look for Ben. When do fans go over the line in terms of, shouting and maybe personal? I think we've talked about personal abuse quite a lot. What are your feelings on it, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's not a great look, as you say, for Ben Spellman. He's obviously been frustrated. The results are a bad result for Gretna, and he's someone's obviously shouted something that's upset him, presumably as an individual. I don't know enough about what actually happened to comment specifically on what was said. But I think from a player's perspective, you just kind of have to try and grow a bit of thick skin and just ignore it. You should be far enough away from the fans, for example, in a lot of situations where you can just walk by or and move on and just get in the dressing room and get out of the way of it. But yeah, he's obviously not there to approach someone. He thankfully hasn't done anything stupid and like assaulted anyone or had a proper Barney's went to pick out one fan. But it's not ideal for him. But I think from a fan's perspective, yeah, I think you have to just be to be sensible, and again, it comes back to that bit about banter and know the line. There's certain topics that you would probably say that are not acceptable. I guess that like comments about maybe appearance and things like that, it's been done to death. And maybe if you're talking about someone's family, for example, that's another topic that's off limits. But things I've seen that. I mean, I think that happened at with Darvel and earlier on this season. I think Darren Miller had a set to a Buffs fan for a similar kind of thing. There was a kind of comment I think made about his children or something like that, and it ended up a bit frosty in between fans, and that's the kind of stuff that I would say is kind of over the limit, and you shouldn't go that way. By all means, tell a player he's terrible, or slag him off for the car he drives or his haircut or whatever. If you want to do things like that to me is fair game. Or, like me, if you got a stupid beard or you dress silly or something like that, and you can get things like that. I mean, that's fair game. That's all banter, and that's all kind of part and parcel of football. But when you start to get proper offensive about things like that, and obviously there's a wealth of topics that are just off limits completely in society, not just football as well. And I think it is, as long as you stick on the line as a fan, it's a part of football, and that's fine. But once you cross the line, don't be surprised. But if a player does come back at you and says something, because I think you see that before as well. I've seen it in the past, certainly when I went to Kelly games, where someone will shout and swear at a player, and then the player swears back at them, and it's like, well, they're all shouting and going raging because a player swore at them, and I'm like, well, you've just called this guy an F and B or whatever, and then he's called you something back, so you're fair game as far as I'm concerned at that point. But I think go back to Ben Spellman, just should try and just get down the tunnel and get on with Saturday night rather than get himself involved and getting a red card and then getting say a match ban, getting in a bad enough state as it is without having to lose him to a suspension probably for a few games. I'd imagine. I don't think it'll just be a mandatory one game. I think he'll be getting a couple of game suspension at least anyway. So poor from him, but the fans should just kind of make sure they're keeping on the line.
You've got to think though, like some of the stuff that has been said, and most of the time I think you're right. I think it's just banner, but some of the times you think if you said that on the street to someone, they would fucking take your jaw off. You know what I mean? So it's. I feel sorry for Ben. I just think it was just pure frustration. I don't think it was really. Yeah, I don't think it was all of what was said. I think there was a what you would call a perfect storm of circumstances. But yeah, I'm sure the Cowden fan probably was a wee bit surprised when he started because Ben's a big guy. I'm sure he was a bit surprised when he saw him coming at me. But it's a difficult one. But yeah, sometimes I think it's been called out numerous times. Fans think they can say what they want, and it's just not everything's acceptable. You know what I mean? Especially when you're going personal, obviously racist, anything like that. It's not acceptable. And you kind of hope that other fans would call them out and say, "Look, that's not right." Yeah.
I think you're right. I think there's a bit of self-policing that should happen, and I think it probably does. I think if, for example, if I was at a ground and somebody made a comment that I thought was over the line, you would be like, "No, hold on a minute, don't say that." And it maybe only needs that. Maybe that conversation be like one person to kind of call an individual out and say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not acceptable," and that's it stored. But yeah, as long as you keep on the line, for me, it's fine. Well, that's all for us on the official catch-up. Chris, where can everyone find us if they're looking to do so?
Official catch-up on Twitter, Lowland League catch-up on Facebook, and Google. Anything. We keep saying it, West of Scotland Football Podcast or Lowland League Podcast or whatever, you'll find us. We're on Google. We're pretty much everywhere podcast-wise now. Audible, I think we're up and running. There was a weird thing where we weren't. It's Spotify, just everywhere, Ben. Just type in official catch-up and there'd be like a big list of places we don't even know about sometimes as well. So
we'll do the old like and subscribe stuff as well. Remember, I always like to get that plug in. If you're watching on YouTube, for example, or the video, then hit the old subscribe button, the notification bell, all that stuff you see from the YouTubers of the world.
But you, Ben, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Bingert on Twitter. I don't really do any other social media at the moment. I have a Facebook page, but it's just for my mates and my family. And Instagram, I don't even bother that now either. I think just Twitter for football. If you've got any banter that you want to fire my way, or abuse, I mean, if you're always open to a bit of abuse, so send it my way. So we're back, I'm sure, next week with another edition of Official Catchup. Until then, cheers.